Today, we're diving into a huge question, one that gets right to the heart of how our political systems work. When it comes to all the different groups and movements out there, who really has the power?
I mean, you ever feel like that? Like your voice just gets completely drowned out in all the noise? It's a super common feeling. You care about an issue, but what can one person possibly do? So, what's the move? Well, the classic answer is you team up. You find other people who feel the same way you do. And for hundreds of years, this is exactly what people have done to make sure they're heard. They form what we call interest groups. And right there, that's the big question we're tackling today, isn't it? Are these groups a brilliant tool for democracy that give a voice to everyone? Or are they a system that just helps the rich and powerful get even more powerful? Okay, so to even start answering that, we need to get on the same page. Let's break down what these groups actually are and how they operate behind the scenes. So here's the key thing to remember. An interest group doesn't want to be the government. They're not running for office. Think of them more as the voice in the government's ear. Their whole goal is to influence and pressure the people in charge to pay attention to their specific cause. And look, this idea has been around forever. We're talking about groups like the Abolition Society way back in the 1700s who proved that organized citizens can literally change the world. But, and this is a big but, something happened in the 1960s. It was like an explosion. Suddenly, the number of these groups, their size, their influence, it all went to a completely different level. So let's look at the two big theories about all this. First up, the sunny side of the street, the idea of pluralism. This optimistic view goes way back. In the 1830s, this French thinker, Alexis de Tocqueville, traveled around America and was just blown away by how everyone was constantly forming groups or associations. He saw it as this incredibly powerful, positive feature of a healthy democracy. The political scientist Robert Dahl really nailed it down. He said, think of it this way. Power isn't one big block held by one group. It's scattered all over the place. And in the messy, complicated dance of politics, pretty much any group that gets organized has a chance to step onto the dance floor and make its voice heard. So if you're a pluralist, these groups are absolutely vital. Why? Well, for one, they make sure it's not just the majority running the show. They give a real voice to minorities and marginalized communities. They also educate all of us by putting out information the government might not. And honestly, as fewer people join political parties, these groups are becoming one of the main ways we get involved in politics at all. Okay, that all sounds pretty good, but that's not the whole story. Let's flip the coin and look at the much more critical take, the theory of elitism. So, where pluralists see a crowded, open dance floor, elitists see a locked VIP room. They argue that power isn't scattered at all. Nope, it's concentrated in the hands of a power elite. The top dogs in business, politics, and the military. For them, power comes from money and who you know, period. And, it's hard to ignore the money. Just take the 2016 U.S. presidential election cycle. A mind-boggling $6.8 billion was spent. So think about it. If you're a small community group trying to raise funds with a bake sale, how on earth can you compete for a politician's attention against a corporate lobbyist with a multi-million-dollar budget? So from this elitist perspective, these groups often hurt democracy. They just lock in the existing power structures, giving even more of a voice to major corporations. Plus, the people running these groups, we don't elect them, right? They aren't accountable to us. And a lot of their work, like backroom lobbying, completely sidesteps the public democratic process. This all brings us to a really important point about how these groups actually get things done. It's not just what they want, it's how they play the game. You can basically split them into two camps, insiders and outsiders. The insiders, they've got a key to the building. They're on a first-name basis with policymakers. These are your big business federations and powerful unions. The outsiders, they're locked out. They have to shout from the street just to get noticed, using protests and media stunts to build up public pressure. Now, what's fascinating is that both insiders and outsiders are often aiming for the exact same targets. They want to influence government departments, lobby politicians, use the courts, and get parties on their side. The fundamental difference isn't the goal, it's their level of access. And this is a perfect example of an outsider group in action. A group like Just Stop Oil knows they're not getting a polite invitation for a quiet chat. So what do? They have to be loud, disruptive, and impossible to ignore. They're creating so much public noise that the people inside the government have no choice but to pay attention. All this talk about protests and grassroots action leads us to something a little different, but definitely related, the social movement.
A social movement isn't really an organization with a head office and a membership list. It's more a cultural tide, a wave of collective action. Think about the environmental movement or the women's movement. It's a huge, sprawling network of different people and groups, all pushing in the same general direction based on a set of shared values. And you'll often hear about new social movements, the ones that really took off in the 1960s and are still going strong. What makes them new? Well, they tend to focus on quality of life issues, like the environment or human rights. They're often decentralized without a single formal leader, using social media to organize. And they are famous for their creative, sometimes theatrical protest styles. So, after all that, we have to come back to our original question. We've seen the theories, the tactics, the movements. So where do we land? Are these groups a force for good or ill? Well, as you've probably figured out by now, it's complicated. There is no simple answer. The real impact of any group depends so much on the context, the country's political culture, how its government is set up, and the specific issue they're fighting for. It's never one size fits all. Which leaves me with one final question for you to think about. In this constant battle for influence that's shaping our world, where do you see yourself? Are you an insider, trying to change things from within? An outsider, making noise to demand change? Or are you watching from the sidelines? The answer says a lot about where power really lies.